Red.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't really go along with it because, along with an awful lot of people, I think this, the talent is in Cork. I mean, it's a huge county. We have more players than any other county. Admittedly, we don't have maybe the marquee type names of the Joe Cannings and the Henry Shefflins and the Owen Kellys now, but still, like, there's massive talent in Cork, and anybody who's watching the Cork Championships at Premier, Intermediate and Senior level would tell you. I mean, like, there are still, out of all that talent, you surely can get 20 or 25 players, who can challenge the best in the country. But I think it's just the way that we've been going about things in Cork is all wrong. You can't read too much into the lack of titles. The Cork have been competitive at minor and under 21 this year. Like, they had a very good minor team, and they had a very good under 21 team. And we never know what would have happened if Ciara Sheehan and Aidan Welch had played against Tip down there. Like, and Tip are now favourites for the under 21 title, and they really fancy that team in Tipperary because. I mean, like Cork, without having any of those guys maybe on the senior team, were able to almost beat that Tipperary team. So, like, the talent is in Cork, and it's there underage. Well, I think all that's wrong is that we're just not as organised as some of the other counties. I mean, Kilkenny, I suppose, are the benchmark in every which way, because certainly in organisation and in the way that, that they've nurtured their young talent over the last 10 years. Like, there isn't a young fella in Kilkenny that slips through the net. They know every single player, who has maybe the capacity to make it, and like, he's brought right through the system. But in Tipperary, I think they're pretty well organised now. In Waterford, they seem to be getting organised. In Limerick, they seem to be getting organised as underage as well. Galway also, but I think it's just that we're not properly organised, and maybe it's the fact that we're such, like, geographically, Cork is such a huge county, that it's difficult maybe, having all those players trying to pull them together. I mean, it's almost like the Dublin football syndrome, like, there's no question but that Dublin have massive talent in football, but maybe they just have too much talent, and they just seem to be able to, can't seem to pick out their best 15 players, their best 30 players. I mean, I was looking at the minor team last night, that minor Kilkenny team last Sunday, Paul. I don't know if you saw that game, but they were absolutely phenomenal. I mean, they were brilliant,
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked down at the bottom of the programme, and they have a manager and a selector. There's two people looking after the team. And I was talking to Michael Welch afterwards, who was in charge of the Kilkenny under-21 team, and he said, that 3 is the maximum now as a management team in Kilkenny, and has been for a number of years, and he reckons that was a massive step forward for Kilkenny, because, like, you could have too many people, inside there, too many cooks, as they say, spoil the broth, and I think that you have that situation happening in Cork all the time. Like, what he reckons is that you have all your backroom staff now in position. The guys, the trainers, the expert trainer, and the nutritionist and the physician, and all these different people, and they all have their own areas of expertise. Where before, you might have had a trainer who was also a selector, but he said you don't need that now. You need 3 maximum. That's what they have in the senior team as well. And he said that seems to work best. But in Cork, like, you can have 4, 5. It's just I think that we have to tighten up that system. But the other thing I think is the way that we've selected our managers here, and and without trying to open old sores and everything else, but. Like, you have in Kilkenny, and again, they are the benchmark, but you had continuity there, for the last 11, 12 years with Brian Cody. And he made mistakes in the early years, but he has learned over the years, and he's gotten better and better as a manager. And at the moment, like, he's out on his own. He's a towering figure. But in Cork, you had the situation, where Donal O'Grady left after 2 years, for his own reasons. I mean, I think, from a Cork perspective, I think if Donal O'Grady had stayed on for another 4 or 5 years, God knows where we'd have gone, because he is a very cerebral kind of a hurling individual, and I think he would have come to terms with Kilkenny, and maybe tried to figure out a way again of progressing this Cork team on again. But he left after 2 years, and John Allen took over, which was, natural progression, natural succession. You had relative success again for 2 years while John was there, like, 2 Munster titles in All Ireland. And again, John left, and again, for his own reasons, and you don't want to criticise anybody for doing what they had to do. They had done their stint, but, like, you would have thought that the least Cork would have done was to maintain some kind of continuity in that, because this was a team and a management team that had been there for 4 years, and 4 successful teams years, in a year when Kilkenny were also very, very strong. And instead of, plucking from that team or taking from that team, and you had 2 guys who said that they were interested in it. You had Ger Cunningham and Patsy Morrissey, like every one of that management team were ignored, and they brought in a guy who, by his own admission, like didn't want the job, had to be approached a couple of times, and eventually I think it was actually Frank Buffy himself who wasn't even on that committee, who went and persuaded John McCarthy to come in. So, like, you had the 2 years there which were lost, for whatever reason. And again, I wouldn't fault in any way, shape or form John McCarthy for it. I mean, he went in there, he did the best that he could. But what I'm saying is that, there should have been some continuity maintained with that successful management team.